1970 Triumph Bonneville. It's called a T120R. It was on my dad's bucket list. He had a list of motorcycles that he wanted to have before he died, and this thing showed up at my shop in Texas. So I called my father and I said, hey, I think I found your motorcycle. I think I can get it. So I talked this attorney out of it, bought it for my dad, tuned it up, and we rode it for probably 15 years unrestored. It had 2,800 miles on it when we found it at the shop in Texas. It had been sitting in a barn. It may be a Vietnam veteran that died. It may be that his parents didn't know what to do with it after he died. That story has to be investigated some more. It was all original. It hadn't had anything replaced. It was just ridden. And I decided at some point that I was going to try to do sort of a partial restoration on it. And as I took it apart, I found enough things to where I really couldn't do a good job without just taking it completely apart. At that point, my dad had stopped riding it because he was getting too old to kickstart motorcycles. So I went up to Indiana and got it from him and brought it down to my shop. And after thinking it through, taking some stuff off of it, I decided to take it apart and do a nice job. So it's a garage restoration. It was done in a two-car garage over in Ericson. I made a small paint booth that fit in the window of my garage where I could stand at this cardboard paint booth and paint small parts. I did those in my garage. The plating went to a place in Pennsylvania called Paul's Chrome. It's one of the better shops in the country, and they did the chrome. Everything's pretty much the original stuff. It's just been refinished. The frame and all the nuts and bolts and all that have all been refinished. But, maybe one or two parts on the whole motorcycle aren't the original parts it was born with. The engine's been hot rodded quite a bit. I like that. I like stuff that looks stock and original, but it runs a little better than it's supposed to. This thing's got some head work that we did on it in a shop up in Asheville. It's got bigger valves, it's got better springs, it's got aggressive cams, a Megacycle. It's got bigger carburetors than their Makunis, and it's got a billet cylinder that was carved out of a chunk of aluminum down in Florida at a shop called MAP. And because it's got so much money tied up in the engine, I didn't want to use leaky carburetors. And the original carburetors are kind of notorious for being leaky. So we put Makuni carburetors on it. I took it to a shop in Texas where I worked when I was a college kid, and we painted it this candy apple red, which is a DuPont color, because I saw a Triumph just like it at the Barber Festival that had this candy apple paint on it. It's not the original color. The original color is kind of a burgundy red. It had these stripes are exactly what it had when it was born, and they were silver, and it had the gold, but the red was a different shade of red. My dad was upset about that until he saw it, and then he decided he could live with it. It's got some subtle stuff on it. There's an oil filter down here in the frame that it didn't come with. And this bracket was modified, and then the weld was done by somebody that's really good, and it's real pretty. A lot of the oil fittings on the motorcycle and the fuel lines have got these special little clamps on them called odor clamps that you'll see on boat engines and you'll see on airplane engines. Anyway, I ride it a lot. I've ridden it 300 or 400 miles in one day. And it goes kind of fast. It'll go somewhere between 110 and 120. That's it.
Well, all right. And you say it's a 1970?
It's 1970. The seat's original. The seat's never been recovered. The seat trim's original, but everything else on it's been refinished.
And for those of us who don't know, 1970 Triumph, which model?
Called a T120R Bonneville.
T120R Bonneville.
Probably made 40 horsepower when it was stock. Probably would go about 102, 105 miles an hour.
How many horses do you think it's making now?
I bet it's in the 60s now, maybe 70. This was the cool machine, and I think a reason a lot of people liked them in the U.S. was they rode these things in World War II and after World War II in Europe, and they liked them because they handled and they were light. So when they came back after their tour in Europe, they wanted a lightweight motorcycle that would go around turns. And that's where the Triumphs and the Nortons really took off in the U.S. It's a lot of Vietnam, or not Vietnam era, but World War II era guys.
Well, all right, it's a beautiful bike, and thank you for talking with us.
Thank you.